Hi everyone, and welcome to this video. So in this video I'm going to be talking about relationships between serializers. Now relationships between serializers come up when we have two models that may be related in terms of relationships. For example, let's say our user table had a one-to-many relationship to posts, so that each of the users that you create for our application can have a lot of posts or can have many posts. Now in this video we're going to be explaining how we can be able to implement such a feature using the Django REST framework. Now at this point in our application we have been able to create our users as well as our posts, but we haven't been associating the two models. So we're going to go and create a one-to-many relationship between users and posts. So the way we're going to do that is by heading over to our posts app. So I'm going to go within our posts app right here, and within our models I'm going to begin by adding an extra field on our model for posts. Now that is going to be our author field. This is going to be models dot, in this case we're going to call it a foreign key. Then we'll have to specify which model this is a foreign key to. So I'll have to import our user model. So I'm going to use the get user model function that comes from Django. So I'll have to import it from Django.contrib.auth. We are going to get access to our get user model function. And once we get access to this function, we're going to create our user model basing on the call of this function. So I'm just going to come right down here, and what I'll have to do is to say user is going to be equal to get user model. And right after doing that, then I'm going to go where we actually have our author. So I'll pass in the first attribute as our user model, and the next attribute is going to be the onDelete attribute. So this is going to specify whether we are to delete this user and get rid of all the posts that will be associated to the author or to the user who these posts belong to. So I'm going to specify that onDelete. Sorry for this. So this is going to be onDelete, and this is going to be models.cascade. And what is going to happen here is each time we delete a user, we're going to be getting rid of all the posts that are associated with this user. Now after doing that, then another attribute you're going to specify is going to be the related name attribute, and this related name attribute is going to be for posts. Now we are defining it as posts, and yet the field is author because it's going to establish a reverse relationship that will help us to access each of the posts an author has created. So we can be able to do something like author.posts, and then we'll be able to get all the posts that that specific author created. Now I'm going to first make these changes to our database, so I'll save. And after saving, I'm going to pull up our terminal. So once I pull up this terminal, I am going to basically terminate one of these terminals, and I'll go ahead and create another terminal. So this is within our virtual environment. I'll go ahead, and the first thing I'll do is to go and run our migrations. So I'll actually create our migrations first with Python money.py make migrations. So right now we have a change in our post table. So remember, we've created some posts that do not have an author. So we are being told to provide a one of default. I'm going to go for option 1, and then I'll just simply provide a figure of 1. So the default value of the author for those posts is going to be number 1. So what I'll do in this case is to run the migration. So I'll run Python money.py and then migrate. And this is going to go ahead and save our posts to the database. Now that we have this, let us go ahead and run our application. So actually our application is running. Now the next thing we're going to do is to create a serializer that's going to help us to be able to return a user's posts. So we can have a page such as a profile page, and this page can have some of the information about a user as well as some of the information about the posts that this user has. For example, a timeline of a certain user. Now to implement such a feature on our API, we're going to create a view that will return such information. So this will return both information about the user as well as the posts that that user created. So to do that, I'm just simply going to go right within our accounts app. So we have two apps. We have the accounts app as well as the posts app. And then within our accounts, I'm going to go where we have our serializers.py, and then within our serializers, we're going to begin by creating that serializer. So we're going to create a serializer that's going to return information about a user, as well as information about the different posts this user has created. So I'm going to create this class and I'll call it the current user posts serializer. Sorry for that long name. And this is going to be a model serializer, so I'll just come and say it's going to be from serializers dot. So this will be a model serializer. And once you have this, then we're going to define a meta class. So we're going to have a class called meta, and this will have our model. So our model is going to be our user model, and the next thing we shall have are going to be our fields, and this will be an iterable, a list containing our fields. So we shall have fields such as the ID, the username. Now we can have some stuff such as, let's say, username, and then the email, then other fields we may prefer to basically add. And another thing we're going to do is to create a field that's going to show the relationship between our models. So to do that, I'll simply come right here. Now, since we established our relationship as user.posts, I'm simply going to come here and say posts, because this is going to be for the author of those posts, and this is going to be a field. So we're going to define this as a field, as a related field. So this related field is responsible for showing the relationship between our user as well as our posts. So I'm going to begin by showing the string related field. Now this is a read-only field that's going to target the model on which we created our relationship, and that's our post model, but it's going to return the string representation of that specific model or objects of that specific model, as we're going to see. So I'll just come right here. Since we expect to return an iterable containing all our posts, we are going to set many to true, because this is going to return a list of objects or of dictionaries. So what I'll do is to save, and once you have this, then let us go ahead and also change something. Now we're going to head over to our views within our posts, and we are going to change something really important. So in the previous videos, we used model mixins. If you haven't seen that video, I'm going to leave it as a card just at the top there. So what you're going to have is our model mixins. In that video, I explained how model mixins work. They basically allow us to perform functions instead of writing views for the different CRUD functionalities we may want. So this actually saves us from writing a lot of code. Now, one thing about mixins is they come with functions or methods, and those methods are called the hooks. So these hooks allow us to basically add some functionality onto how our model mixins will work, and these are very important in cases where we want to customize the functionality of our specific action. Now in this case, we're going to look at how we can be able to adjust our serializer so that we can be able to save or attach a user or associate a user with a given post. So those hooks or those methods come with a way or a format in which you write them. So we're going to look at how we're going to do that. So the first thing we shall have to do is to associate each of the posts when creating them to an author. So we're going to do that within our post method on our generic API view for creating our posts. Now here, I'm just going to come right here, and we have our create method that's going to help us via our model mixin to create our post. Now the way I'm going to do that is by making sure that we change or we add some functionality of saving the user as the author of the post. So the way we do that is going to be by defining a hook. So this hook is always written as perform. Then we write the name of the functionality or the name of the function or the action we are supposed to be performing at this point. So we are performing the create function or the create action in this case. Now when we are creating that, we are actually calling self.create on our model mixin. So what we need in this case is to get our serializer and attach our user to our serializer. So the way we're going to do that is by coming and saving. So I'll just come and say serializer.save. But in this case, we are actually going to be calling our user, or getting access to the user who created that request, and that will be the author of that post. So to do that, I'm just going to come and access our user. So since we have our serializer right here, we are going to get, actually since we are within our generic API view, we can be able to get the user who created this request. So that can be accessed via self.request and then .user. And once we have this, then we can just come right in here and specify. So we need to actually use the name of the author, or the field of the author. So I'll just come right here and say that this author of this post will be equal to our user who we got from our request. So once we have this, then let us go ahead and save and try to create a user with these specific credentials, or we are going to create a post, and that will be the author of this specific post. So to do that, I'm going to head over to Insomnia right here and go to where we're creating a new post. Now I guess I'll need to create a new JWT, so I'll send this request, and then right in here I'll copy the JWT, or the access token. And when we go where we actually create a new post, I'm going to go where we have our bearer and then the token, and I'll provide a new token. So when we're creating our post, we have some basic title and content here. So I'm going to change this to, let's say, asynchronous. So let's say we're going to have asynchronous JavaScript. And once we have this, I can be able to send. And now we see that our post has been created. So once this is running successfully, we expect that this post is actually associated with our user. So let's just create another post. So I'm just going to come right here, and what I'll do is to create another title. So let me just call this lorem ipsum text and try to send this. So our post has been created. So that's two posts associated with this current user. Now let me create another post. So let's say why web dev is boring. So I can be able to send this, and this is actually our post of post name. So what we're going to implement is a route or an endpoint that's going to allow us to get a user as well as the posts associated with that user. So we're going to be using our serializer, or our user, or our current user serializer that we've actually created. So the way we're going to do that is by heading over right here within our code. So I'm going to do that within our posts views. So I'm just going to come here, and what I'll do is to go where we actually have our views. Or actually, let me just do that within our posts. So I'll just come right here within our views for our posts app. And the first thing I'll do is to create a function based. I'm actually going to just create it as a function based view. So I'll just come right here and import our API class. It seems like we already imported it here. So I'm just going to come and say that we're going to have our API view class, and this is going to have a list of HTTP method names. So we'll have a list of HTTP method names, and we shall have the method of get. And then I'm also going to decorate this with permission classes, because then we shall need to authenticate to access it. So I'll just come right here and say that we shall have permission. So actually we did not import this, but let me go ahead and import it. Now what I'm going to do is to go where we have our API decorator, our API view decorator, and add our permission classes. Now we shall also need to provide an iterable of permission classes. Now the permission we need here is authenticated, is the one for is authenticated, and that permission allows us to only access this endpoint when we are authenticated, or when we have our access token. So when I go at the top of our code, I'm going to begin by importing that specific permission. Now actually imported it right here, so I'll just come, and what I'll do is to add it within a list of permission classes. And once I add it, then I'll create our function. So this is going to be get posts for, so I'll just say get post for current user, and we shall have a request object. It's going to be of type request, And once you have this, then the next thing we're going to do is to actually return our user. So shall need to access our user. So our user is going to be equal to, so in this case our user is going to be the request user. So this will return the user object for the user who is currently logged in or currently authenticated. And once you have this user, then we're going to use our user sign or our current user serializer. So I have to import it. I'm just going to come at the top of our code and say from accounts. So it's going to be accounts.serializers. We are going to import our current user post serializer. Now once you have this, I'll just come right here and then create an instance of that serializer class, and this is going to be our current user post serializer. So we shall provide our instance, and our instance in this case is going to be equal to our user. And once we have that, then we are good to go. So we shall just come and return a response object. So this response object will have the following. It will have the data, which is going to be our serializer data, and it will also have the status. So in this case, we're going to have a status which will be status.http 200. Okay, so once we have this, I'll go ahead and save. And when I save, then we are going to go to our urls.py so that we create a URL pattern or a URL for that specific view. Now I'm just going to come, and what I'll do is to just come and say current user, and this is actually going to be views dot, in this case we shall just call our function or our view function, which is get post for current user, and I'm simply going to come and provide the name here, and this name is going to be current user. So when I go ahead and save, when I save this, let us try to see this in action. So I'm going to head over here to Insomnia, and what I'll do is to first create a new request. So this new request is going to be get current user. So this is going to be for getting a current user, so it's going to be a get request. So when I go ahead and create this, and it's going to be our localhost, our URL /8000, and then we're going to go to our posts, and then we shall access the current user. So once we have this current user, I'll go ahead and send, but this is, we are not authenticated to access this, so I'll go to our headers. I'll create a new header, which is going to be our header for authorization. And once you have our authorization here, I'll provide our bearer, and we shall have our token. So when I send this, we are actually seeing an error here, and they're telling us fields post was declared on the serializer but has not been declared in the field, not included in the fields. So when you go back to our serializers here, we need to actually add our fields for posts, and when I save that, hoping that everything is fine, our server is trying to reload here. So when you go back here and I try to send, we now see that's actually returning the user as well as the post created by that user. So what we have here is we are returning the string representation of all the posts that this user created, and that's how a string related field actually works. It actually returns what we specified as our string representation for each of the post objects that we shall create. Alright, so let's look at another related field. So another useful related field is the hyperlinked related field, and what that does is to help us be able to see the detail pages, or the pages that can actually show us an individual post. So the way we're going to do that is by coming to our serializer right here. I'll just be playing around with the serializer, so I'll just come and change this to a hyperlinked related field. So we're going to first have our attribute as many equals true, and then the next thing we're going to have is going to be the view name. So the view name is going to be the name of the function for the detail of a specific post, and the way we get that is by going to our urls.py and then be able to see that specific view that's going to return for us the post detail, and that's actually what we gave the name of post detail. So I'll copy this and go within our serializers. I'll paste this. It's actually going to be under our view name, Now once we have this, then the next thing is going to be to also provide our context. So when we have this, we actually also need the query set that's going to define how we're going to query for our user objects. So I'll just come right here and provide our query set, and this is going to be equal to user.objects.all. And once we've queried for all this, then the next thing is going to be to go ahead and basically provide our request object within our context when creating our serializer instance. So we do that within our views, and where we actually said serializer equals to current post serializer, then provide that instance. We're going to go ahead and add one more attribute, which is going to be our context. So we need to access our request object. So this is going to be a dictionary. So it's going to be a dictionary, and this dictionary is going to have our request object, and then we are going to access our request object. So once this is done, I'm going to go ahead and save. So when I save, hoping that our server is running, we have no errors. So when you try to send this right now, we'll see that it's actually bringing for us the URLs to the various post details. So when you go to this URL right here, it's actually taking us here, but you don't have permissions for that. So maybe I'll have to include them within our serializers. I'll just come within our views, and what I'll do is to come right where we have this. So this is actually taking care of the post detail, the update, and the delete. So I'll just come and provide our permission classes, and this will be equal to is authenticated. So I'll just come and provide that dot is authenticated class. In this video, I've been able to talk about serializer relationships, and I've talked about the string related name, the string related field, as well as the hyperlinked related field. I'll leave the link to the official documentation so that you can check out other ways of creating such relationships. Thank you for watching, guys. If you like this video, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.